Hello everyone, thank you for standing by and welcome to Cardno's full year results presentation. All participants are in a listen-only mode. There will be a presentation followed by a question and answer session. If you wish to ask a question, please click the hand symbol on the right-hand control panel. I will now hand the webinar over to Susan Reesboard, CEO and Managing Director. Please go ahead, Susan.
Thank you, Jackie. And thank you for attending our full year results presentation. With me today is Peter Barker, our CFO, and we'll be sharing the podium today. I just want to say that FY20 has been a year with quite challenging headwinds. If you look at the demerger, the CEO transition, the bushfires, civil unrest, current wildfires and hurricanes, is we have faced quite a few headwinds. And what I am so proud of is that we delivered a bit ahead of expectations. So I'm really thrilled with the resilience and the strength of the staff, and I believe we came out a stronger Cardno. So let's get into the presentation a bit. Jackie, could we advance to the 2020 performance and review? Thank you. So as I mentioned, our profitability was up year on year, especially if we normalized out of the Integer business. And that is the fourth year in a row of hitting or exceeding market guidance. So we were up on gross revenue, we were up on fee revenue, and we were up on underlying profitability. I'm also very proud of our cash position, and Peter will talk about that more later. The Americas continued absolute outstanding performance. In Asia Pacific, the turnaround took longer than we thought. So again, we achieved, or actually we exceeded market guidance, and we didn't do it necessarily in a pretty way, but we absolutely delivered. International development delivered as expected. So again, very strong performance throughout the business. Our total backlog, if you look at that number, decreased by 4.1%. And just to provide a little color, and again, Peter will go into more detail on this later. If you look at the Americas and the APAC consulting businesses, actually, the Americas is up by about 4.6%, Asia Pac up about 3%, and with really quality backlog. So the trend down is basically because our international development business wins very large projects that are on multi-year cycles. And so it's very normal to have large baseline projects that works its way down, and within that multi-year cycle, another hit to bring it back up. So the underlying backlog is in a very good position, and we enter FY21 very strong. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned, 2020 was a year of remarkable headwinds. And if there is any silver lining to COVID, in particular, it has resulted in us coming out stronger than we did going in, and a much stronger global team. I want to talk about a few highlights. And the first is with regard to Cardno identity. That successful demerger of Integer was absolutely important for us to begin to hone what we look like to the marketplace. So we're no longer trying to be all things to all people. We really are a firm that provides solutions to really complex problems in the health sciences, in energy and natural resources, in infrastructure and social development. We make sense as a consulting entity now to the marketplace. With regard to the Americas, as I mentioned, really strong profitability performance, largely driven by specialty services in health sciences, natural resources, and asset management. So in our science and environment and our government services business, there was tremendous performance. And by the way, that wasn't something that just fell into our lap or that was just happenstance. In each of those instances, it was because of key pre-positioning that had been done years before to put us in the position with key accounts that had us win and be able to excel this way. We did a very important part of the business was de-risking the business with the successful demerger and divestiture activities. With international development, I cannot sing the praises of that team enough. At the onset of COVID, our ID team had to perform actually a Herculean effort in demobilizing staff and families and then subsequently remobilizing personnel hand in hand with our clients to meet our clients' project needs, but with the utmost duty of care to our staff and their families. In Asia Pacific, again, Asia Pacific's turn this year wasn't as expected, but there has been significant progress made. First and foremost, they critically continue to build backlog, which is up to 3% that I mentioned earlier, and it's quality backlog. So again, backlog for backlog's sake doesn't do Cardno any good. It's quality backlog that allows us to achieve the profitability that we're budgeting. The second thing is we did, as you all know, I came into this job in late calendar year 2019, and we went through a mid-year restructuring that was completed in Q3, and it is vital that we did that because it helped us weather COVID in Q4. So the hard work, I'm very proud of our Asia Pac team in doing that hard work to position us to one, weather a global pandemic, and to start seeing the trend data build for FY21. So if you look at the last few months of performance out of Asia Pac and even this July, what we're seeing is the trend that is meeting the expectations that we have for that business. And significant progress was made in Q4 establishing, which is the fundamental piece of the business, the financial and project controls and reporting, to leverage some of the needs and methods that came out of the Americas. So again, very happy with the very hard work out of our Asia Pac team. With Latin America, they continue to execute on the wind down plan of Kamonosca operations. And then finally, with regard to digital delivery, we've spent a significant amount of time and effort to ensure the smooth transition of Integra off Cardno systems. And that has been a big effort, as you can imagine. That winds up at the end of this calendar year. And then what that lets us do is work on the, basically the IT overhaul plan that's been developed to optimize our IT spend. So what you'll see out of Cardno is that we'll be hitting industry benchmarks with regard to IT spend, but we'll be getting more for it because we still have some of the work to do from the years of integrations and some legacy issues that we're cleaning up, and we have a business plan for that. Next slide, please. So many people have asked me, how did we manage through COVID? Because we did it, I think, again, very proud of what we did and how we did it. COVID was, and it will continue to be a business challenge through FY21. So we're not kidding ourselves that this is over or that the majority of it is behind us, particularly as we see spikes right now in Victoria, spikes in different parts of the Americas. I'm proud of how we handled it. First and foremost, ChemRisk was our Weapon X. Is the ChemRisk team of epidemiologists, toxicologists, and health scientists are one of the reasons that Cardno has had such a low incident of work-related COVID exposure. Their research and guidance informed not only Cardno and our business response, right, to safety, business continuity, et cetera, but they were also providing that to clients as well. I'm very proud of the fact that ChemRisk was acknowledged. I got a letter from Larry Sloan, the CEO of the America Industrial Hygiene Association, with regard to the tremendous leadership our team contributed to the COVID-19 Open America Guidelines Task Force. We had 12 scientists, a minimum of 12 scientists on that task force. Secondly, COVID's redefined safety to include mental and emotional well-being. Safety, as you know, is Cardno's #1 core value. It drove each and every business decision we made, starting back in spring as we navigated through those early days of response. And it informs every decision we make today about how we reopen offices and when we reopen offices. It is critical to what we're doing. Now, the one thing that we've seen that's more new is how mental and emotional well-being has come front and center. We saw that at the beginning of COVID, and what we did was our marketing and communications team, including Jackie, who's here on with us today, dove in and created My Cardno Village. And that was a place where our staff could all remotely access places like Kids Corner, where we had story time or cooking challenges. We had Cardno Cooks, where we had cook-offs. We had the Wellness Difference, where we had competitions that people did on whether walking or bike riding. Yoga classes, the Cardno Lounge, where there was game night, in a variety of different communities geared to the different needs and interests of the company. So it was a way where we came together critically in this time. And I'm still concerned about the longer term effects of this work from home environment. And we're looking at taking that to the next level with regard to buddy systems and first aiders, for example. And then thirdly, and every bit as critically, is we created sound business practices, increased communication. So we have been on a journey, as you're all aware, over the last 5 years in particular, with regard to financial discipline. And we run our businesses with increased granularity and visibility of key business metrics. What did COVID change about that? What changed was the frequency at which we looked at data. And again, Peter will talk to you about this more particularly, but specifically with regard to not just utilization, but labor every week and our cash position every week. Our global and regional incident management teams, as well as our business continuity teams, met at a cadence sometimes twice a week in certain periods of COVID and the changes that were happening, at other times every other week, and continue to this day, depending upon the needs of the region. And globally, we meet every other week. So we are monitoring every metric with regard to the business, and as things change, and they are still changing on a regular basis. Again, not like in the early days of COVID, which was every 4 hours, but we are certainly seeing weekly changes. Silver lining that I mentioned earlier is we're a tighter global team. I think I told you at the half year results is my goal really for Cardno was that we move from a company that has global offices to a truly global company. And interestingly enough, COVID has helped us become that. And we've increased communication at all levels throughout the company with very straight talk and increased transparency to the team about how we're going and what the road ahead looks like. Next slide, please, Jackie. So what was the COVID financial impact in particular? We are very fortunate that the COVID impacts were mild for us, and they were mild for a couple of reasons. We had some positive impacts in that there were various stimulus packages, which meant there was demand for more work, especially, let's say, in the infrastructure space. There were projects that were previously subject to various layers of approval, and clients wanting to keep things moving, streamline some of their approval processes. And at the same time, we had some projects do what we call move to the right, which is they didn't get canceled, but they got delayed. And they either got delayed as a whole set, or they got delayed in how they opened. So instead of having 10 people on a project, maybe we could only have 3, and it dragged out longer. So we saw some of that as well. We saw some loss of productivity doing the transition to and from work from home. But I will say in the sort of mid days of spring, so late spring, what we actually saw was also a bit of a productivity bump because people were at home and they weren't commuting and there was no other place to go. And we had our people really put heads down and work extremely hard. We've put a COVID lens over our financial assumptions and projections, which I think is completely appropriate given where we are right now. We did not receive JobKeeper, or for that matter, the Paycheck Protection Program of the CARES Act in the Americas. And I would say that on the whole, our backlog has actually gotten stronger through COVID. So we're cautiously optimistic about FY21 in particular, but appropriately conservative. So what's the impact to the future? I think post-demerger, one of the things that we've seen in particular is that we're benefiting from the portfolio effect. So the fact that we have operations in the Americas, APAC, and internationally, that we have work for private sector, public sector, and in public sector at the federal, state, and local levels, is that we have a very good balance in our business, and we're seeing that with a very strong key account focus. Our strategy for the COVID impacts, and particularly that business discipline I talked about on the previous slide, helped us to react more quickly, and it continues to do that because we really do want to protect staff positions. And when we have a longer horizon to see business impacts, that gives us more opportunity to be agile, to be nimble with regard to our response. We don't have great deal of exposure to the businesses that have been impacted the most by COVID, so we're lucky that way. And we are dealing with, in the United States in particular, different jurisdictions that are creating a COVID leave, which it varies jurisdiction by jurisdiction about what would qualify for that. So in some cases, it's that you actually have COVID. In others, it's that you're taking care of somebody who has COVID, or even that you have childcare issues because of COVID. But different jurisdictions have different requirements, and then they have different caps on the value of that depending upon what the need is. So that required our HR departments, our finance team, to increase communications about what that looks like and how that would affect payroll. And we have a continued work from home requirements, and we're again looking at the emotional well-being of our staff moving forward. Next slide, please. Through it all, and it's one thing that we've used every minute of every day, is our vision to be leaders in improving the physical and social environment for people around the world, our purpose of making a difference, and our values of safety, integrity, people, and excellence. When you face headwinds, this is what you use to guide every decision. Next slide, please. So what are the expectations for Cardno moving forward? So as I mentioned, we're a consulting firm that provides solutions to complex problems, in a nutshell, in the health sciences, in energy, natural resources, infrastructure, social development. But if I look at what the difference is and what I would talk to clients about, it's really the power of the engineers and scientists that we have. It's the purpose, and it is true to a person about making a difference. And it's that passion and energy that comes from that purpose that lets them attack the most complex problems. So I'm very proud of who Cardno is today. If you are a staff member, so if in fact we're your employer, there are things you can expect. You can expect safety and security of employment with benefits and performance-based pay. You can expect engagement, communication, and voice. And as you'll see in the slide pack, there are several initiatives and programs that we've instituted and continue to drive with regard to that. We are getting better every day at clarity of career path with feedback, opportunity, and investment in development. And development, and I tell people in recruiting, there's never been a better time to be at Cardno because of opportunities for growth and a commitment to development. And meaningful commitments to inclusion, diversity, and equity. These aren't just words for us. You get what you measure, and we're proud to measure our progress in this space, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. So that's if you're a staff member. If in fact you're a client, so we are your solution provider, you can expect to have, next slide please, Jackie, global thought leadership with accessible local delivery. So it is that connectivity at a local level, but the breadth and depth of experience of all of Cardno. You can expect delivery of agreed upon scope, schedule, and budget. That's the basic in our industry. But when you partner with your clients from a business perspective, you begin to look at innovation to increase quality and drive down cost. Basically a partner in their business solutions, right? And if we are your investment, if you are a shareholder, you can expect consistent and reliable performance, meeting or exceeding expectations. Stability of the leadership team, getting Asia Pacific right, because we've had issues the last few years with regard to that. And then something I want to talk to you a little bit more about further in the presentation is really environmental, social, and governance leadership, because it isn't just what we do for a living, it is who we are. Next slide, please, Jackie. So I want to talk to you about 4 of those issues that I touched on. The first is the inclusion, diversity, and equity. We are committed to providing a work environment that's inclusive for all. And so what does that mean is we want everybody to feel like they can bring their whole selves to work. We released our inclusion and diversity strategy for 2019-2021 and formed an IND council. There are 11 council members, and in those 11 council members includes the executive leadership team, because what we realized is IND isn't somebody else's job, it's part of all of our jobs. And because of that, we're seeing the traction that we need. There are but with those 11 council members, there's more than 50 employee representatives involved in the 6 inclusion and diversity working groups across the business. Our initiatives across these working groups are shown in the graphic to the right, but there's so much more activity and different layers of activity across this business. And what you can see is unconscious bias, mental health and wellness, workplace flexibility, and enhanced communication are part of every single initiative. So again, the best day is the day when absolutely everybody can bring their whole selves to work, and that and we're celebrating the differences of people that are here. Next slide, please, Jackie. Technical excellence. So the one thing that I mentioned is that if you're a client, is that you can expect that you have access to the breadth and depth of experience of Cardno. That's our secret sauce, right, for clients, is this technical eminence, this technical excellence across the business. And we have a technical excellence program. So right now we're in the process of interviewing the next layer of principals and senior principals. So those nominations are and interviews are underway. But we also have a global senior principal network. And so there are 2-year appointments to lead service line leadership across the business, and regional senior principals that do the same thing in regions. And what that means is if you're a client, you have this access. But again, if you're a staff member, you are connected to the technical fabric. That is why you came to Cardno to begin with, is not just to learn what's best in your region, but to learn what's the best practice across the globe. And one of the things that I wanted to highlight is particularly data acquisition, because we are a business that thrives on data for absolutely every client. And we are actively engaged in projects that are leveraging the best of technology. So sophisticated robotic and computer vision technology to acquire and analyze data. If you check out our LinkedIn profile, there's a wonderful short video about that. And I'm very proud of the work that we're doing. Next slide, please, Jackie. And I want to stress, and again, I use this in any recruiting kind of call, is we are a learning organization. So we are dedicated to growth and development, and we just launched our global high potential development program. So if you are an employee, you know that we'll make investments of you. If you are a client, you'll know that we are developing everybody within the company. And if you're an investor, we're not just developing people for the next 6 months. We're developing the leadership that will take the company into the next 6 years, the next 10 years, and building that strength and capability to run a very solid business. So I'm so excited about this HiPo program, which is for these 15 individuals, but learning and development doesn't stop with 15 people. If you look at some of the metrics on the previous page, right? 25,000 courses that our staff have taken, 14,000 that are related to professional development. We've created learning threads across the business, depending upon what kind of cohort you're in the business, because we are a learning organization. That's great for staff, it's great for clients, and it's great for investors. Next slide, please. And now I'm so excited to really talk about ESG. So as I mentioned before, ESG is more than what we do. It is who we are. We provide a broad range of services, aiding and assisting our clients with achieving their ESG priorities. We have for a long time. We've just done it in a siloed way. And we do it from a position of those deep knowledge experts that I talked to about in the technical excellence page, right? In FY21, though, in addition to all of these services we provide externally, we're going to be reporting on the progress we're making as a company, setting visible ESG goals. We, by the way, have appointed a board committee now chaired by Rebecca Ranich, and our business just isn't about financial performance for us or for our clients. It's delivering financial performance the right way. Next slide, please. And so, you know, where are we in this journey? We're farther along than we thought. So, in having the privilege of assuming this position, the one thing that I was so proud of is the progress that we have in different pieces of the business. Again, though, it's been siloed. And so, what you'll see is whether it's with regard to the eradication of modern day slavery, if it's with regard to climate change science, human health equity, human rights related work, the list is endless, actually is we've done such tremendous work. What we haven't done and will do in FY21 is pull our resources so that the business platform is more visible to clients and more visible in our own commitments in the ESG space. And so with that, Peter, I'd like to turn the podium over to you, please, to go through our detailed financial review.
Great, thanks very much, Susan. So just moving on to slide 16. Which is the first of three, looking at our financial highlights. Just a couple of points to draw out here. Fee revenue up 12%, 11.6%, and EBITDA on a pre-AASB 16 basis at 43 million, which is up 11%. And critically, it's backed by cash. So when you look at our operating cash flow, again, pre-AASB 16, it's 43.5 million, so just slightly higher than EBITDA. So a really pleasing outcome. Now, critically, if you include AASB 16, you get a broadly similar outcome. EBITDA goes up to 73.5 million, but operating cash also goes up to just slightly higher than 73.5. So whichever way you cut it, you're getting really strong result growth backed by cash. So it's a good outcome. As Susan said earlier, backlog down slightly. Now that is to do with mix. Our consulting business, so that's our Americas division and our Asia Pacific division, their backlog is up year on year, but our international development business, so supporting clients in emerging nations, that backlog typically runs to 3-year plus cycles, procurement cycles, and where you are in the procurement cycle, especially with large government clients in Australia and the United States, determines where we sit there. So all in all, that's driving that backlog down, and I'll come to that in a few slides. If we move forward to slide 17, this breaks out the same result looking at 1H20 and 2H20, so it gives you the half on half. And just looking down at row 4 there, so again, a pre-AASB 16 EBITDA, sorry, row 3 I should say, the pre-AASB 16 EBITDA. You can see that we're exiting 2H20 at an improved rate over 1H20. Now, you'll recall when Susan and I released the half-year results back in February, pre-COVID, that we were at the time saying we anticipated an improved margin, especially in the Asia Pacific business. When I come to that in a few slides, you'll see that starting to bear fruit. Now, there's a long way to go, but you see it starting to bear fruit, and that's encouraging. But also, we obviously had a very, very good second half. All things being equal, generally first half is a stronger half for us versus second half, to do with cycles around, frankly, holiday season in Australia and the weather season in the United States. And what that means is that in January, it's quite difficult for our people, especially in the northern parts of the US, to get on the road. Conditions are such that they lose days because they physically can't get to the client, which is very normal for us. But what we're saying here is we exit FY20 at a much stronger rate than we started, which is quite encouraging. Moving on to slide 18, with AASB 16 and our demerger, and you'll recall that in our first half, we booked an impairment associated with our Asia Pacific business. There's quite a lot of moving parts here, and this waterfall takes you from our EBITDA of 43 million, which I spoke to earlier, all the way through to the net profit after tax of 56.6 million. So with all the swings and roundabouts in there, you move to an NPAT of 56.6, 57 million. A lot of that driven by those two big green bars in the middle being the impairment in Asia Pacific, which we booked in the first half. And then the discontinued operations, which is the accounting profit on the demerger of Integer Group, which is, as you'll recall, occurred at the end of October. So speaking of which, if we move forward to slide 19, now this is a slide that Susan and I presented on the half year. It hasn't changed. We completed the demerger effective 31 October. There were some additional accounting entries associated with that in the second half, but it's all driving our statutory result rather than our ongoing result from operations. And if you want to have a look at note 3 of our annual report, it's got all of the movements there associated with the demerger. In terms of financial impact going forward, we are supporting Integer through a transition services agreement, which runs through till some parts are starting to run off now, but the bulk of it runs through till December of this year. It's a cost recovery program, so at the end of that, we move on from there. But other than that, Integer has no. We are two completely separate companies, and Integer has no impact on Cardno going forward. If I move forward then on to slide 20, this is the impact of AASB 16, the new leasing standard. We showed a version of this on the half year, showing the first 6 months results. This is the bridge from pre-AASB 16 to post-AASB 16. And we'll reflect on this going forward. Right now, the market is, from all the feedback that we've received, the market prefers to look at a pre and a post. So we'll continue to do that for the moment. But if we eventually move to a post-AASB 16 basis across the board, then obviously we'll provide all the necessary bridges as we have done here. Okay, so if we move on to slide 21, which is our full year result by each of our segments, and it's starting with the Americas, who just had an extraordinary year, and I'll come to that in a few more in greater detail in a couple of slides. But revenue up, EBITDA well into the double digits, and the 1,150 odd staff throughout the Americas really had a smashing year, and I'll come to that in greater detail. International development, a solid year, exactly where we needed them to be, but slight underperformance were from what we've seen in prior years, and that's associated with one specific investment that we made, and secondly, underperformance in our business in Europe, and that's associated with a number of challenges from our donors in the UK and on the continent, and that's reflects the economic circumstance that we're seeing there. Asia Pacific, as Susan and I spoke to on the half, very much in getting back on track mode, and we're really pleased with the second half performance for Asia Pac. Starting from a low base, of course, in terms of numbers, but the team there have been working really hard on that, and a number of really good wins. Backlogs up, so they're not going to be back at the margins that we saw back in FY 16, 17 for a couple of years, but the trajectory is underway, and it's most encouraging. So if we then go on to slide 22, which is Asia Pac in detail, and as you can see, for the year, Asia Pac's EBITDA margin is down year on year, and as I just said, what is encouraging about this is not where they are now, but where they exited FY 20. So the last 3 months, and indeed the first month of July, is most encouraging. So Asia Pac will do better than this in FY 21. They won't be back, as I said earlier, to the margins that we saw 3 years ago, but they're heading in that direction. And so a long way to go, but really encouraging. And critically, if you look at the bottom left there, we've broken backlog out for each of our divisions. This is the first time we've done this. And you can see year-end backlog is up 3% year on year. And not only the backlog is up, but the quality of the backlog is up. And if you look at some of the key wins, so like Logan Water Alliance, Nowra Bridge, Muswellbrook Bridge, Barry's Beach, Northeast Link, these are all Aura, Argyle Mine for the mine closure, Aura, which is a project north of Brisbane. All of these are large projects that run for some period of time. So it's not just the backlog's up, but the quality of the backlog is really most encouraging. So high hopes for the future, but it's going to be a gradual thing. Americas on slide 23. So Americas had an extraordinary year. Margin there well into the double digits. And in fact, one of our divisions there, our toxicology business, we're working on a series of projects that really were very high margin. And our people, and the reason they're high margin is because our people were almost, it seemed, working around the clock. So a number of specific deliverables there that really cause a great outcome. Look, we'd like to think going forward, the Americas is probably going to operate in a low single-digit margins business. We do expect the business to gently grow next year, but it has had a really wonderful result this year. And again, their backlog is also up. So a backlog's up 4.6% year on year, which is most encouraging. But I think the point that we'd like to make to the investor community is that the margins achieved this year were higher than we'd anticipate going forward, and they're extraordinary. So best practice, I'd like to think, would probably sit around, somewhere between 10, 12%, something like that would be an ongoing sustainable number. Moving forward to international development on slide 24. As I said earlier, backlog down, but that's to do with the multi-year program buying cycle associated with our large government clients primarily in Australia and the United States. Some really good wins there for USA, DFAT, and the SADC. So backlog, as you can see there, is huge, and it runs over multiple years. So also, we made a couple of small bets, a couple of small investments in international development, which explains why margin is down year on year, and some challenging business environments in Europe. But really pleasingly, our business in Asia Pacific and our business in Americas, both of those were ahead of internal targets for the year and are well set up for a really good FY21. If we move on to our balance sheet now, it's quite challenging to look at this because FY19 included Integer, so it's pre-demerger, and FY20 excludes Integer. The thing that I'm most proud of the Cardno team, and this is through COVID, our DSO improved from 87 days down to 80 days, so it improved 7 days year on year. And industry best practice for the metrics we have for our industry is 78. So we think that's sustainable going forward, but pleasingly, our conversion of timesheets to WIP to debtors to cash has continued all the way through, and that's a real testament to the leadership from Cardno's 100+ businesses around the world. Each business unit manager really focusing on business discipline, but also it reflects the quality of our clients and the quality of the work that our people are delivering. So really, as you can tell, quite proud of that. Page 26 is a number of our metrics. The key thing I'd point here is that our net debt at year end was $600,000. And again, that's just a testimony to the ongoing fiscal discipline the company's had in place for the last 5 years. All of our ratios, liquidity ratios, are excellent. Our new lender group post demerger of HSBC, Investec, and National Australia Bank have been very supportive, and our debt facility takes us through to October 22. So one of the things Susan's very keen for us to look at going forward is cautiously funded on strategy, straight down the fairway acquisitions, which Susan will talk to in a little bit. The point we make here is that we have a very, very conservatively funded balance sheet and quite a bit of firepower. And you've seen that ongoing operating fiscal discipline for the last 5 years, and it will continue. FY20, if we move on to slide 27, which is our cash flow statement. Now, this is shown net cash is of 73.5 million. That's a post AASB 16 basis, and again, it's a great outcome. The point we make here is that our operations are supported by our cash generated, which is a really pleasing result. With that, I'll pass it back to you. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Peter. So let's look at the FY21 outlook. At the half-year results, one of the things that I mentioned is that one of the big challenges ahead for us was having Cardno move from being a company that has global offices to truly a global company. And that's really realizing the potential and the promise of our history of acquisitions, dating back to 2004. Right, is to actually be able to realize that. And I've got to say that one of the silver linings of COVID has been the fact that we've made this pivot actually aggressively. So when we look to FY21, we anticipate mild overall impacts from COVID. So I think we're being, again, completely appropriately cautious as we look to our FY21, and our outlook is consistent or actually even slightly more aggressive than industry predictions in the associations that I participate in. ESG, so when we look to say, how will Cardno grow? ESG will become more prominent in establishing Cardno's brand, not only how we operate, but the services that we offer. We'll see growth in Asia Pacific, and we'll see growth in margin based on improved financial performance, and we'll see growth in organic growth inside the business. That's really what's on deck for Asia Pac in FY21. For the Americas, again, we'll see that organic growth year on year, but we're also going to be looking for acquisitions. If you look at how we, I think we really successfully de-risked the business with the demerger and the divestiture that we made. And that set up a great position for us to grow the transport space. So it's really to capitalize on one of our strengths, and through acquisition, grow that piece of the business. The other place where we'll look for acquisitions, particularly in the Americas, is in the water space. It's a space that is an interesting intersection of infrastructure and environment where we are so strong. So it's a very natural division add into our business portfolio. So we'll see acquisitions in that space. With regard to international development is just a tremendous part of our business. One of the things that we are very aware is that for our clients, that donor community, their mission and their priorities are changing too because of COVID, and we will be with them side by side to help them meet their priorities. And so you'll see a very strong attention to client, particularly with regard to DFAT and USAID. And we have further opportunity for simplification and lowering our cost to serve. So as I mentioned earlier when we were talking about sort of our digital journey, once Inteja has successfully, good for them and good for us, off of Cardno systems, there'll be more time to look at, and we've already put together optimization plans for our IT footprint, which includes things like moving to a single ERP. The company will implement, by the way, a small holding sale facility and is considering a voluntary share facility, share safe facility, enabling shareholders with small holdings to sell their holdings. And after this, Cardno expects to resume a modest share buyback program. So what does that mean at the end of the day? Is that while forward-looking projections in particular are particularly challenging right now, in the current environment because of COVID, we anticipate an EBITDA in the range of 40 to 45 million. And I think that we've been, again, appropriately conservative in our outlook because of the uncertainty due to COVID. So with that, I'd like to thank our staff, our clients, and our investors for a strong FY20, and I look forward to a wonderful FY21. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan and Peter. Just opening up for questions now. If you would like to ask a question, if you just click on the hand symbol on the right-hand control panel and wait for your name to be announced. No questions popping up at this stage. We'll give one extra 10 seconds if there's anyone that would like to ask a question of Susan or Peter. Nothing coming through there. There's no questions, so I'd just like to hand back to Susan Riesbord for closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. And again, I want to thank you all for your participation today. Know that Peter and I are available for questions if you have them. And I forgot to mention, I want a big shout out, by the way, Jackie, to you and your team for helping us with this presentation today, and particularly, Peter, you and your team for the heavy lift with regard to closing out FY20. Thank you. And I also wanted you all to know is that we announced to the market that Peter resigned and that he was going to wrap up by the end of September. His shoes are big to fill, and so he's graciously agreed to extend out to February of next year so that we can give the proper attention to that backfill. So again, thank you, Peter, for everything.
Fantastic time to be here. Thank you, Susan.
So with that, Jackie, I think it's a wrap.
Thank you. That concludes the presentation today. A recording of the presentation will be made available in the Investor Centre of the Cardno website. Thank you, everyone. You may now disconnect.